Hey gang, this is Nate on the Stone. Welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be dissecting the real reason why we need free speech for a free society to exist. But before we get started on that, make sure that you stay through to the end of the video for a special message that I've got for you. Free speech is a right that theoretically everyone agrees that we should have. You don't really see a lot of activists out on the streets demanding that the First Amendment be scrubbed out of the Constitution completely, like we've seen with the Second Amendment. Instead, if there are demands that free speech has to be limited, it's always under the banner of hate speech or harmful speech that has to be banned. I mean, if people actually argue that the entire First Amendment, at least in regards to free speech, had to be erased, they would be crucified in the streets. And after that, if they were politicians, then they'd be voted out of office. But more and more often, we're seeing this growing idea that only the right kind of speech said by the right sort of people are allowed for public and even private discourse. Just a few days ago, we saw the latest example of this when Facebook and Instagram completely banned several online personalities, such as InfoWars' Alex Jones and Paul Joseph Watson, independent journalist Laura Loomer, and Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan. No rules were cited as having been broken, and no explanations were really given as to why these people were kicked off of Facebook and Instagram. Instead, the platforms just decided that they weren't the right kind of people that were wanted. Taylor Lorenz, writing over at The Atlantic, gave a quasi-explanation for the ban, saying that people like Watson and Loomer made, quote, the platform fertile ground for conspiracy theories, misinformation, and extremist thought, unquote. An explanation that really falls flat when you realize that Facebook still gives a platform to groups like Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood, and individuals like the tin pot dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and former comedian, now anti-Trump persona pazza, Jim Carrey. But it gets even worse than that, because apparently Facebook, not just being content with banning these people, has also decided that people who share the works of these people on their platform can also be banned. So it's not enough that people like Watson, Loomer, and Jones were banned from Facebook. The ideas that they advocate also have no place on the platform, and which, in a very real sense, have been outlawed by Facebook. This is not the first time that Facebook has actually shown itself to be an enemy of free speech. In 2016, the website Gizmodo reported that several former Facebook employees had come forward, anonymously, to report that Facebook had told them to artificially keep events and people from trending, events like CPAC and people like Mitt Romney and Steven Crowder, even if the algorithm was actually pushing those stories to trend in people's news feeds. In other words, Facebook was artificially manipulating its own algorithm to keep events and people that it didn't want to trend out of people's news feeds. Just last year, in his testimony before Congress, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted publicly that the company had a problem with left-wing bias. And just last month, thanks to the investigations by Project Veritas, it was revealed that Facebook, under the guise of fighting trolls, was restricting bandwidth, serving auto logouts, as well as refusing to post links or comments by these trolls. The catch being that Facebook had defined trolls so broadly that it really included anyone who diverted one iota from the postmodern leftist ideology, an ideology that Facebook is completely behind. I actually did a whole video about that when that story broke, a video which you can watch by clicking the card right up there. There are, of course, the usual problems with this scenario. The first one being that Facebook publicly proclaims itself to be a platform, a free space where people can get on and post pretty much whatever they want. Heck, their vision statement reads, quote, "People use Facebook to stay connected with friends and family, to discover what's going on in the world, and to share and express what matters to them," unquote. Which means, at least theoretically, that people should be able to log on and post things that matter to them, whether or not the wizards who actually run the platform agree with it or not. But at the same time that they proclaim themselves to be a free platform, they turn around and act like a publisher, deciding which opinions, which stories, and which views are allowed on the platform and which ones are not. Deceitful, false advertising, possibly even slightly fraudulent. And I know that some people are going to come back at me with the well-rehearsed counter-argument, but Facebook and Instagram are private companies. They can do what they want on their own platforms. Look, I'm not against a private company making their own rules and then requiring people who use them to follow those rules. I get it, I understand, I'm cool with that. But the thing is, if you're going to have rules, the rules need to be clearly written, they need to be public, and they need to be enforced equally across the board. And right now, none of those things are happening. Does that mean that you want the government to police Facebook and Instagram? What's going to happen when the progressives are in charge of everything again? Look, we don't have to create another government department, agency, or task force for the right thing to be done. We can apply monopoly laws already on the books to this situation. Congress could tell Zuckerberg, Dorsey, and all the other CEOs of all the other social media platforms that if they want to keep being treated as platforms, then they better start acting like platforms. And if they keep acting like publishers, then they're going to be treated as publishers. And then there's the whole fact that this is just an attack on free speech itself. Just speaking practically, free speech is necessary for a Republican, pluralistic free society because it acts as a pressure release, a way for the common Joe to engage in the body politic, a way for people to make their opinions known, to disagree with each other without resorting to violence. If certain ideas are deemed not just impolite, but the actual reincarnation of Nazi ideology, like that the southern border should be secured or transgenderism shouldn't be taught to third graders, if those ideas are deemed hate speech and are policed, and the people who hold those ideas are shut up, the people who hold those ideas aren't going to have any way of actually expressing their opinion, expressing their disagreement, except with a fist. And to keep society rolling along as smoothly as it can, it's just better if people actually engage in a shouting match instead of throwing stones at each other. But the reason why we need free speech goes beyond just the practical. It's needed to keep our minds free, because if our minds are not free, then tyranny has definitely won. Beyond its utilitarian purposes, free speech is necessary for us to find the truth, because the thing is, free speech really only makes sense if we understand that objective truth is a real thing. If there was no such thing as objective truth, everything that we said would just be sound and fury signifying nothing. That means that we wouldn't really be justified in fighting for anything, because if there was no truth, anything could technically be the truth, which means that the opinions on the left would be just as valid as the opinions on the right. And at that point, that means that it's not really an argument to see which ideas are true, which ideas are better. It's just about a power struggle to see which ideas are going to be enforced upon society. And free speech is a necessary means for us to discover the truth, because so much of the truth is discovered through argumentation, through speaking. Think about a classroom setting where students are arguing with their professor or teacher and with each other over the meaning of the Declaration of Independence. Think about two friends arguing over the idea if college is justified today or not. Think about a little kid who pesters his parents day after day after day with questions, and more questions, trying to figure out how the world that he's suddenly found himself in actually works. Argument, discussion, speech, it's all necessary to find the truth, or at the very least, to at least make a stab at finding the truth. And the truth is necessary because the truth is just reality. What is? And if we know reality, if we have an understanding of reality, then we're not confined by a whole bunch of rules to acting in a certain way, like so many people today seem to think. Instead, we are radically free to work within reality. Think about it like this. If we understand arithmetic, we're free to do math. If we understand music, we're free to play a musical instrument. If we understand what good is, then we are actually free to be good and to perform good actions. But what happens when certain ideas are banned and the people who defend those ideas are completely shut down? Well, there's no debate, there's no argument, which means that the truth is whatever the powers that be decide that it is. If, for example, the idea that the southern border should be made secured is deemed hate speech, and the people who advocate and defend that idea are completely banned from the public square, which today includes the internet, then the only idea that's going to be out there, the only truth that is going to be tolerated is the idea that the southern border should be left wide open for whoever wants to come across. And the result of that will be that more and more people will actually agree with that, because that's going to be the only idea that they hear day in and day out. And when that happens, when only certain ideas are declared acceptable and everything else is banished to the outer darkness, and when everyone who advocates for those banished ideas are shut down and shut up, then with no discussion, no argument, our minds are only going to have the ideas that the powers that be declare to be the right ideas. And the result of that will be that our minds really won't be our minds anymore. We'll just be basically robots programmed by the elite, the enlightened ones, the powers that be. We will have finally reached that magical utopia of 1984 where thought crime, anything that contradicts what the powers that be says, will have been eradicated, because it will be impossible for anyone to actually think contrary to what the enlightened want us to think. And that brings me to the special message that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, because gang, this is serious stuff and we all need to do whatever we can to stop it. This past weekend, I was able to attend a Demand Free Speech rally in San Francisco, California. Got to meet, hear, and mingle with some great people like Michaela Bearpaw.
Well, before tyranny comes a silencing of discussion. Before tyranny comes a policing of human rights. Before tyranny comes a gaslighting of the weak in mind. Before tyranny comes independent thought being deemed a crime.
Bernadine Barber.
Okay, free speech. Talk! Talk! There's no crime in talking! Say what you feel, say what you think. I may not agree with you, but do it anyway.
Ashley St. Clair.
More and more we're getting immersed in the digital world. Half of you guys don't even go to stores anymore. You order things on Amazon. And the public square is no different. Being taken off of social media, you are having your right to engage in public discourse and democracy hindered.
Philip Anderson, Ricky Rebel, and a whole host of other great people whose account information is in the description box below. And it wasn't just invigorating to see and hear and talk to these great people, it was also invigorating to see all the people who had come to San Francisco for the specific purpose of defending and rallying for free speech, to do what they could to keep the spirit of 76 alive. So here's my message to you. Go to the website demandfreespeech.org and see when the next event, the next rally is going to be. And if you can, go to it. Yeah, it might cost you to sacrifice a little time and money, but it'll be worth it, because like Ronald Reagan said, freedom is always only one generation away from dying. Well, that about wraps up everything for right now, gang. As always, if you liked the video, whether you agreed with me or not, don't forget to show your support by giving it a like and sharing it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and the other social media platforms. And if you like videos about the culture, politics, and religion, but from a different POV, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to ring the bell for notifications so that you will always know when I post new videos like this every Tuesday. Videos you're not going to want to miss. As always, thank you for watching, for giving me a little bit of your time. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed to my channel, and I will see you all again here next week, gang, on top of the stone. Ciao.